A racist security guard spots a black man in a luxury jewelry store. The guard asks the man to leave, but it turns out the man is not just anyone. The man is the top client of the store. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's emotional and eye-opening story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We're always bringing you real powerful stories that remind us just how important it is to stand up and protect the ones we love. Also, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let us know what country you're tuning in from. It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach and connect us all across the world. Sometimes we're confronted with moments that test our character, moments that expose our hidden biases and challenge the assumptions we carry about others. These are the moments that force us to look in the mirror and realize how wrong we've been. This is one of those moments, a story about a man who thought he had everything figured out, only to learn the hard way that appearances can be deceiving and judgment based on skin color can lead to humiliating consequences. It was a normal day for a security guard at an upscale jewelry store, a day he would never forget. Henry had been a security guard at Elegance Jewelers, one of the most exclusive jewelry stores in the city, for almost 6 years. From the moment he took the job, Henry had a clear sense of his responsibility to protect the expensive merchandise and keep out anyone who didn't belong. Elegance Jewelers was the kind of store that attracted the wealthiest clientele, celebrities, billionaires, and influential figures from around the world. The place gleamed with elegance, filled with diamonds and gold pieces that cost more than Henry could earn in 5 lifetimes. His job was simple: keep everything safe and maintain the integrity of the store's exclusivity. Over the years, Henry had developed a system, a way to assess who belonged and who didn't. It wasn't just about the way people dressed, but the way they carried themselves. Henry prided himself on his ability to read people. He believed he could tell within seconds who was trouble and who wasn't. That confidence is what led Henry to make the biggest mistake of his life. It was a Saturday afternoon and the store was quiet. The customers who usually came in on the weekends were serious buyers, people who had already made appointments or who had a reputation for being regulars. Henry stood near the entrance, his arms crossed, scanning the floor with a trained eye. The sales associates, dressed in sharp, tailored suits, were talking quietly among themselves, preparing for their next clients. Then Henry saw him. A tall black man, mid-30s, dressed in a simple but stylish black turtleneck, jeans, and polished leather shoes, stepped through the door. He had a commanding presence, walking with confidence as he glanced around the store. But something about him immediately put Henry on edge. The man looked around, his gaze lingering on some of the more expensive pieces displayed behind thick glass cases. Henry watched him intently, narrowing his eyes. This man didn't fit the profile of the typical customers who came into Elegance. Sure, his clothes were neat, but there was something about him that didn't sit right with Henry. Maybe it was his casual demeanor, or the fact that he wasn't accompanied by a personal assistant or a shopping consultant like most of the other high-end clientele. The man walked further into the store, approaching one of the cases that held diamond-encrusted watches worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. He examined them closely, as though considering a purchase, then took out his phone. Henry's instincts kicked in. A gut feeling, he told himself. Something wasn't right. The man scrolled through his phone for a few moments, seemingly comparing prices or checking his calendar. But in Henry's mind, it was suspicious. Why would someone like him need to check his phone in a place like this? Henry had seen this before. People pretending to be potential buyers when they were really just casing the place, looking for an opportunity to steal something. It was part of the reason he had been hired, after all, to protect the store from thieves who might look like ordinary shoppers. But Henry wasn't about to let that happen on his watch. He strode toward the man, his posture firm and his expression stern. As he approached, the man didn't seem to notice him at first, still focused on the watches behind the glass. Henry cleared his throat loudly, forcing the man to look up. "Can I help you with something?" Henry asked, his voice low and controlled, masking the suspicion he felt. The man raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised by the abruptness of Henry's approach. He tucked his phone into his pocket and looked back at the watches, unfazed. "Just browsing," he replied, his tone calm and polite. But that wasn't enough for Henry. "Browsing?" Henry repeated, his eyes narrowing. "These watches are worth more than most people make in a year. Browsing usually isn't an option for most." The man blinked, his calm expression fading as he realized the implication behind Henry's words. He stared at Henry for a moment, measuring him, before speaking again. "Is there a problem?" the man asked, his voice steady but with an edge now. Henry crossed his arms, making his posture more intimidating. "We've had some issues with theft in the past," he said, his words heavy with suggestion. "Just making sure we don't have any problems today." The man's face hardened slightly, but he kept his composure. "I'm not here to cause any problems," he said. "I'm here to make a purchase. But now you're making me wonder if I should take my business elsewhere." Henry didn't back down. "Most people don't walk into a place like this and browse expensive items like that without some kind of credentials," he said, his voice firm. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" The air grew tense between them as the man stared at Henry, a flicker of disbelief crossing his face. He took a slow, deep breath, clearly trying to keep his temper in check. "Are you implying I don't belong here?" the man asked, his voice quiet but intense. Henry didn't flinch. "I'm implying that you might want to be upfront about what you're doing here. This is a high-end store, and we don't tolerate any kind of suspicious behavior." The man's eyes narrowed. "Suspicious behavior? You're profiling me because of the color of my skin. Let's call it what it is." Henry stiffened. "I'm just doing my job," he said defensively. "We can't take any risks." The man took a step closer to Henry, his calm demeanor slipping slightly. "I don't need to explain myself to you," he said coldly. "But since you're clearly determined to make this a problem, I suggest you get your manager, now." Henry hesitated, his mind racing. He wasn't about to let this man intimidate him, but something about the man's calm insistence made him uneasy. Nevertheless, Henry felt that he was in the right. He had been hired to protect the store, and this man was acting suspiciously, wasn't he? The uneasy feeling gnawed at him, but he ignored it. "There's no need for the manager," Henry said, his tone growing sharper. "You can either leave now, or I'll have you escorted out." The man let out a slow, incredulous laugh. "Escorted out?" he repeated. "I think you have no idea who I am." Henry felt his patience snap. This was the kind of arrogance he had seen too many times, people thinking they were above the rules. He reached for the small radio clipped to his belt, prepared to call for backup. "I don't care who you are," Henry said. "You're not above the rules here." But before Henry could press the button, the man took out his phone again, this time with a purpose. He dialed a number, his eyes never leaving Henry's face. "You'll want to listen to this," the man said coolly as the phone rang. Within seconds, someone on the other end picked up. "Hey, it's Marcus," the man said, his voice steady. "I'm at the store. Can you come down? We have a situation." Henry felt a chill run down his spine. The name Marcus? Why did it sound so familiar? He had heard it before, maybe from one of the sales associates or from the manager in passing, but he couldn't quite place it. Yet something about the way Marcus spoke made Henry pause. There was a quiet authority in his voice, a confidence that unnerved him. Before Henry could process what was happening, the store manager, Sarah, emerged from the back office. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had been working at Elegance Jewelers for over a decade. Her eyes widened as she saw Marcus standing there, phone in hand. "Marcus," she exclaimed, rushing over. "I didn't know you were coming in today?" Marcus nodded calmly, slipping his phone back into his pocket. "Seems like we've got a misunderstanding here, Sarah." Sarah's eyes flickered from Marcus to Henry, confusion and concern spreading across her face. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice tentative. Marcus glanced at Henry, his expression unreadable. "Your security guard here seems to think I'm not supposed to be in this store." The blood drained from Henry's face. He looked at Sarah, hoping for some kind of validation, but the look she gave him was one of shock and disbelief. "You don't know who this is?" Sarah asked Henry, her voice barely above a whisper. Henry shook his head slowly, his throat dry. I thought he was acting suspiciously." Sarah turned back to Marcus, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, Marcus," she said quickly. "I'll handle this immediately." Marcus held up a hand, stopping her. "No need to apologize, Sarah. I think your guard here just needs a bit of an education." Then Marcus turned to Henry, his eyes cold but calm. "You see," Marcus said, his voice deliberate, "I'm not just a random customer. I'm the top client of this store. The watches you see here, I've bought most of them. And that VIP section you guard so fiercely, it was built specifically for clients like me." Henry's mouth went dry as the weight of Marcus's words sank in. He had just tried to kick out the store's most important customer, one of the wealthiest clients in the city. And Marcus wasn't done. "Next time," Marcus said quietly, his eyes locked on Henry's, "you might want to think twice before assuming someone doesn't belong based on the color of their skin." Henry stood there, frozen in place, as Marcus walked away. He didn't know what to say, what to think. His entire world had just come crashing down in a matter of minutes. All his assumptions, all his gut feelings about people were laid bare for what they were. Biases he didn't even know he carried. Sarah gave Henry a hard look before turning to Marcus, offering another round of apologies, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. In the days that followed, Henry found himself questioning everything. How many other people had he judged unfairly? How many had he made feel unwelcome in a place they had every right to be? The shame of it gnawed at him, a constant reminder that he had let his own prejudice cloud his judgment. I hope you guys liked this story. Until the next one.